And joining me on the line, great to be chatting about all things that are happening in politics. And we're joined by our Flow News 24 team, head correspondent in Canberra, Hannah Phillips. G'day, Hannah. How are you today?
I'm going well. How are you today, Clayton?
I'm doing okay. Hannah, I'm just reading between the lines here, but there doesn't seem to be much going on in Canberra at the moment. So could I be wrong?
Look, there seems to be one lead story, and it sort of has about 8 or 9 tentacles that come off of it that go back to the one lead story that's been on the newsreel now for around about a month, and it's the story of allegations in Parliament. It seems more and more information is coming out, and it's probably what we all expected, Clayton, but It's one of those sad things as well that we're seeing all of this come out, and you do wonder, is there anything else happening in Parliament? But it seems all the attention has been diverted to the allegation issue.
And there is so much of it because it seems like every day that I turn on the TV or listen to the radio for a news report or get Ricky here to talk to me about it, he's telling me about a new one. There's another one. And it just seems to be so many, and it makes you wonder what is going on. They're supposed to be setting an example and leading for us in our country and helping us with negotiations with China and everything else. But it seems to me they've got a zipper problem.
Yes, I would say that does seem to be the issue. Someone actually said in the media in the last couple of days that you would never have heard of a Menzies staffer spending their time on people's desks. It appears to me that there has been a real shift in how Australian politics operates, and there seems to be this almost entitlement that is okay and that has been tolerated. You know, this really does come back to the significant issue that there is a problem in our culture with how people think they can behave in the workplace. You know, I guess the biggest issue for Australians, and this is what I've been noting, and I was thinking about this last night, it's the idea that we have this huge centre that has been built, purpose-built to run our country. They built a territory to run our country, and people are spending their time doing this in the hallowed halls of Parliament when they should be writing good policy, when they should be talking about the more important things of the day, like economic policy, like how our country can recover from a pandemic. Instead, there's more discussion about how people behave in the workplace than there is about what should be happening in workplaces around Australia.
You're absolutely right, and I'm just noting here issues like the economy, defence, social welfare. All those things seem to be just like they're not important. They're of no matter. But that's what Canberra and what those politicians, us voters, that's why we put them there to sort these matters out for us. So I think they are really letting us down, and that's on all sides of politics.
Absolutely. It's one of those worrying things when you realise there are still people who do not have jobs right now in Australia, who were laid off and still do not have work. You know, the job maker and job keeper payments, those sorts of things have since COVID-19 have sort of started to dissolve out the system. Businesses and companies are now left to now continue to pay, and they may not have had recovery. The recovery is not helped by state governments that continue to shut their borders. This sort of stuff does need to be what is discussed in our federal parliament. Instead, we're talking more about allegations of what's going to happen next. And those allegations obviously now have jobs on the line for them. And one of the big ones, probably, Clayton, that we could mention here is an article that we have popped up on flownews24.com.au, and it's about Christian Porter and Linda Reynolds. It looks like their portfolios are likely to be shifted in an ideal situation. It might help the Prime Minister recover from what has been a bit of a tumultuous month.
Well, I was just about to lead and ask you about that. Do you think that his cabinet reshuffle, will that help him? Will it reset things? Will it shift the focus? Will it show that there is a renewed sort of, I guess, take on what needs to be going on with the country? Will Scott Morrison be doing this? Or is it just, a lot of spin just to try and deflect us from what is really going on in other areas?
The Prime Minister's background is marketing. And right now, this is what we'd call crisis PR marketing that needs to take place to try and change the brand and the image and to encourage younger women to vote for the Liberal Party, especially going into a federal election. This is not going to be forgotten. The Women's March has had a significant impact. The flow-on effect from that has been quite significant as well. So I think it does mean that the cabinet reshuffle, I think, is sort of, in a sense, I would say, a bit of window dressing to try and change the look or the scope of what's actually happening right now in politics, but I don't think it's going to change. This issue isn't really about adding more women to the front bench of the cabinet or changing things around. I know there's a bit of discussion about Michaela Cash going into the position of Attorney General. I think that this is just, I guess, putting out a new fleece and saying, hey, look, this is what it's going to look like today to try and encourage women voters. The reality is that you have a systemic issue in both parties. This is not just something that's in one. This is in Parliament together. This is staffers who are behaving badly. There has been a lot of discussion. I know Peter Credlin has spoken at length about the fact that when she was in politics and working for our previous Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, she made comment that she was really concerned about some of these staffers who had their jobs, and she actually organised for some of these people to be fired. Now, that's underneath the Abbott government. I understand that Turnbull's government, people were allowed to come back to work who had been fired for their bad behaviour. Now, I think it's really important there's high standards set. Clayton, you and I both agree that there should be high standards set for working in any public office, and for that matter, any workplace when it comes to how you conduct yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm just starting to think here as you were talking about the cabinet reshuffle there, Han. I heard a news report earlier in the week where the Prime Minister was questioned about his leadership, and he said no, he's got the full backing of his cabinet and of his party. And we kind of know that that's often when a Prime Minister says that the numbers are circling. So I'm putting it to you, is he going to stay, or is the Prime Minister's days numbered?
Look, I think the Prime Minister's days could potentially be numbered if he doesn't get this media storm under control. I think that the reality is that people will not stop reporting this because they are really concerned that this is happening in Parliament. So I think that the reality for Prime Minister Scott Morrison is he needs to get his house in order. He needs to get the numbers right. The press are not going to stop. They're like a dog with a bone. They're going to continue to ask questions about what's happened in his handling of the situation. And I think it's important for the Prime Minister to realise that this probably is something that was going to come up, but it's come up in his Prime Ministership. And I do wonder why it's come up, Clayton, at this exact point. His numbers were doing very well. I do wonder why this issue has been raised now. I think there's probably been some headspace for it to come up now. But it has been there for many years. So I think it's probably an unfair situation for the Prime Minister to be in a sense, but his handling of it is probably what has come most into question for people and people's minds.
I think if the Liberal Party want to take the matter and put it to one side, they've labelled Scott Morrison with it. That's the only way to do it is to have him gone and have a new leader. That's how I look at it for them to move forward. But we'll wait and see. I dare say all parties at the moment are looking forward to an Easter break. What do you think?
I think everyone will be looking forward to a few weeks off just to take a bit of stock and maybe for this story to sort of drip out of the main media sphere so that people stop commenting on it. I think there does need to be a break. Hopefully the reshuffle of Parliament might sort this out, but I think the writing's on the wall here. This one's going to take a lot of time for people to be comfortable about what's happening in Parliament.
I tend to agree with you. Hannah, thank you very much for your insights and your thoughts. You have a wonderful weekend, and we'll touch base with you again next week just before Easter.
Thanks, Clayton.